Hello everybody, my name is Kenton DeYoung and I'm sitting here with my co-host Dylan Fairman.
Hey!
And this is Unsolved Canadian Mysteries.
Ooh. Kenton, you can't see me.
No, I can't. I'm just looking at a wall. Pretty
Oh
much.
God.
I can't see your reaction.
It's a kerfuffle in this room now.
So it's a whip, work in progress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what that stands for?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, good. So Dylan, if I could see you, how are you?
If you could see me, I'm doing well, Kenton. How is your unseen self?
I'm great. I'm really good.
Good.
We got some good feedback on our last episode.
The walk through the cemetery?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenton has this problem, people, where I feel like if I was actually in a place where there was a murderer walking around, instead of Kenton being like, we should call the police, he'll be like, do you think he's down here? And then we would go walk down there and look for him.
We gotta check it out. We gotta take a look to see what we can find.
Like I said.
They will never know, right?
Yeah.
That's the worst, not knowing.
Did anyone have any particular things they liked about it, or?
They thought we had good chemistry out there.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, they liked that. They liked it out there.
When I'm scared to death and you're walking around like nothing's wrong. Yeah, makes sense.
They think we should do more kind of like in the field work like that.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I'd love to go to like actual like prison or something.
Something that has a little more like more history, or a chance of actually seeing something. Like I've been there 4 times. I never experienced anything. I wasn't expecting anything that night either.
Right.
The scariest thing that happened that night was probably either the gopher, whatever we heard in the grass at that one point.
I like how you say gopher. It's probably what it was.
Or the bell. That was really loud.
Oh, the bell. Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. The scariest thing about that night was Kenton. Okay? Kenton ringing that stupid bell scared the crap out of me, and I thought some farmer's going to show up with a shotgun and kill us.
We got out of there so fast.
Yeah.
So that episode, we put it out Halloween or just about. It's been about 2 weeks since then. It has 500 plays on Spotify. Well, it's not in our top 10, but it's pretty close.
Good.
For only 2 weeks old, that's pretty good.
Perfect.
I can't see what you did, but I heard it. So
I went like this.
okay, nice, cool, great. So you ready for tonight's Unsolved Mystery?
Kenton, I am so ready.
Let me get something out of my bag.
Oh God.
You can't see it, so it's
He brought an arm from the cemetery.
brought something for tonight. Okay, so you ready for tonight's story?
Yes.
All right. So our story begins in 1968. The government of Canada and the Quebec governments have decided to do a program called the Mercury Project. And the Mercury Project, I know it sounds really cool and like extraterrestrial, but it's not that interesting. What it is it's a project to kind of talk about all the different ethnic communities across Canada. 1968 was 1 year after our 100th centennial of Canada, so I'm assuming it's probably related to that. They just want to know who Canada was 100 years into being a country. 1968, they decided to put out a grant for people who want to come up to Canada or who are already in Canada and to do research about an ethnic community. A professor out of Austin, Texas named Jan Perkowski heard about this grant and decided to come to Canada and do a project on an ethnic town.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Perkowski, his family comes from Poland, from an area called Kubashtan. I don't want to get this right. Hold on.
Hoopastank.
No. Professor Perkowski's family is from Poland, from an area called Kashubia. So he is a Kashubian, and there is a Kashubian community in Canada. In fact, it is the oldest Polish community in Canada. This town is called Wilno, and it's just outside of Ottawa in Ontario.
It's called what?
Wilno.
Wilno.
Yep.
Okay.
So Professor Perkowski goes to Wilno and spends a couple of 2 years in 1968 and 69 interviewing the locals and recording their stories and putting things together. And in 1972, he finishes his book and presents it to the governments to file into the Mercury Project. They review this book, his essay, and they end up taking it to the House of Commons in Ottawa to discuss it. To discuss not only the contents of it, but if this was a valid usage of taxpayers' dollars. I believe they end up retracting his essay from the Mercury Project. And I have it right here.
Oh, I see it.
For those who can't see it at home because you listen to this on a podcast, it is a thick book, typewritten, double-spaced lines, the blue cover, and the contents of the book proved to be highly controversial.
And that's the book you've been waiting for?
That's why I had to delay this, because I wait for the book to get here in the mail. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
And there's been a lot of people who've talked about the story online. There's podcasts, YouTube videos, lots of articles. But I think I'm the only one to actually get the hands on the book in question. So that's pretty cool.
Cool.
And I read it this morning, so I could get everything all up to date.
Nice.
So, as they were discussing this book in the House of Commons, the story got picked up by the National Enquirer, and they heard what they were talking about. So they went to Wilno and started knocking on doors and asking questions about the contents of this book. And the reason everybody was so concerned about this book was that a word kept coming up in it again and again and again. And this word was vampire.
Dude.
There are vampires, supposedly vampires, in Wilno. The story goes, we'll talk about Wilno first. So Wilno was settled and colonized by Polish immigrants in the 1860s.
Okay.
They came in the 1860s, and then again, I think in the 1890s, and then a little bit after that, and then the World Wars happened, so there wasn't a whole lot of Polish immigrants coming over. And then, of course, Poland was part of the Soviet Union, so there wasn't many during that time either. So this was kind of like a group of 1860s Polish people settled in a community, and they were kind of not locked out of their home country, but kind of grew up separate, okay?
Okay.
But they kept traditional Kashubian language, Kashubian clothing, food, culture, and it's still very much ethnic Kashubian. So they kept a lot of their beliefs. So when Professor Perkowski went to Wilno and recorded these tales, he recorded what they told him, right? And he starts the book off. I'm going to read the first chapter, the first opening piece. Okay. He says here.
Good. I thought you were going to... I'm going to read the whole book now for you. I was like, well, Kenneth, I don't know if I have that much time.
All 86 pages, man. I'll read the first bit to you. This was from a testimonial from one of the 15 people that he interviewed. Ooh. There was a lot of that at Wilno in the graves. They opened the graves. They cut the heads off. When those who were born vampires are not seen to, then they have to dig up the graves. First he, the vampire, carries off his relatives, and then those as far as the bell rings. It happened at Wilno. They have dug up many, but it was not told, never revealed. They had to dig it up and cut off the head while he sat in the coffin. We have an idea of what vampires are today, right?
We have a lot of different ideas. People really kind of give them... It seems like every year there's a new thing about vampires.
We have Nosferatu, we have Dracula, we have Edward Cullen, right? We have a lot of different types of vampires.
Mona the vampire.
Right, Mona. I forgot about Mona.
Can't forget about Mona.
Yeah, that's right, Mona the vampire. But these vampires are a little bit different. So usually when it comes to vampires, it's because a vampire bit them, and they became a vampire from that, right? The whole biting in the neck, sucking the blood, and they become a vampire. And typically, vampires are super strong, super fast, pale, they can fly, turn to bats, all that jazz, right?
Right.
These vampires are a little bit different. They are more, I would argue, kind of like zombies.
Right.
These vampires, you only become one after you die, but you are cursed when you're born. So how it works is when you're born, there's either two ways to know if you're going to become a vampire. The one way is if you have a part of like the membrane sac from within like a mother on your scalp. It's very rare. I think it's 1 in 20,000 kids, newborns have that.
Okay.
It's not uncommon. It's not a big deal, and you can probably just take it. You just take it off and it's done. The other way is if you're born with 2 teeth. If either of those two things happen, you are cursed to become a vampire when you die.
Do they just like chuck you out as soon as they notice that? The doctor's like, no, I'm sorry, ma'am, you got a vampire, and you just like throws them in the back?
No.
Okay.
Because then they'll come back as vampires.
Oh, right? It's a catch-20.
Right.
21? What is it, 22?
22.
It's a catch-22.
For the first one, they have unique names, these vampires, and I will try to pronounce them.
Okay.
But they are Polish, and my Polish is terrible. So
you don't say.
So 2 types of vampire, and I'm going to butcher these terribly.
It's fine.
One is called the Vashezi.
Vashezi?
Vashezi. VJESZCZI. Vashezi. I don't know. The other one is the Whoopjai. Yeah. So the Vashezi is the one who is born from like the sac being on the head, like the
membrane.
The membrane sac. Yeah. And what they could do to cure that one is they take the membrane, they dry it out. They keep it, and on the child's 7th birthday, they feed it back to the child.
Okay, but where do they get this shit from?
So,
like, it's some crazy guy. Like, oh, I know exactly what to do to fix that.
I don't know how they kind of realized that.
Right.
The vampires in Poland go back to like the 1300s or the 13th century, so it's been around for a while. But its origins, I don't know.
I guess maybe one guy did it, and then they're like, "Hey, he didn't turn into a vampire. That thing must have worked."
It's weird that they took it like the 7th birthday, right? Like, Okay, so we realize that all the vampires have this one thing in common. The membrane sac on their head.
Yeah.
So only tried different years of their life to see which one sticks.
Yeah. Everyone else turned into a vampire except for the 7th.
And to think you have to wait to them to die. So it's like, okay, so we did it on his 4th birthday. Now let's wait 30 years.
Right.
And see what happens.
That's unreal. That's an unreal amount of time. So that's obviously not it. There's no way they had the patience, the generational patience to do this.
But actually, it kind of goes to the next one. So the other one, the Whoopgee, there is no cure. And maybe they haven't found it yet because they didn't have the patience to wait to find another cure. So let's say you don't do the treatment on the first one, or they're sick, or they get the second curse, right? And either way, this person dies. So there's a couple ways to prevent this person from becoming a vampire. One way is to put a cross or a coin inside their mouth, under the tongue. Then that'll satisfy their vampiric needs, and they won't come out of the grave.
Like a silver?
Any coin, I think, is probably fine. Silver, maybe, but I think any coin.
What about a wooden coin?
Sure, why not?
I don't know, Captain.
Okay. It wasn't specific. I assume metallic, but I don't know, maybe a stone coin would work too.
Okay.
All right, so that's one way. Another way is to pour sand inside of a casket, because apparently, okay, so the Count from Sesame Street, also a vampire, right?
Two.
And according to Polish tradition, vampires like to count.
Oh.
But they're very slow at counting. So if you pour a vial of sand into it, they have to count every grain of sand. And they can only count 1 grain a year. So a vial of sand, he's down there counting for a long time.
Okay, whoever came up with these is high. Is extremely high.
Another way, very similar, is to put a net inside the casket, because they'll have to undo every knot. And again, they can only do one knot a year. Okay? So those are preventative measures, okay?
Oh, good.
The other one, a little more, makes sense, is they just bury the person upside down. So they become a vampire, they go to open the grave, and they start digging, and instead of digging up towards the sky, they dig down to the ground.
Yeah, because a little known fact about vampires, they don't understand the concept of gravity at all. Wow, it's really easy digging upward. It almost seems like it's pulling me up.
Yeah, I guess, you would kind of realize that, I think. I guess you'd be falling under the way good point.
Yeah.
So like, you wouldn't be digging that fast, I imagine, but
this must be because I'm a vampire and I'm flying.
I didn't find any instances of them flying in these descriptions. Those are the preventative measures, okay? But let's say you did none of that.
Okay.
So then the vampire comes back, okay? And this vampire, what they do, because the idea is that the family is cursed. So the vampire only goes after family members. So let's say your grandfather is a vampire, he'll only come after people on his bloodline. So if it's on your mother's side, he'll go after your mother, and then you, and then your kids, but leave your father's side alone. Okay. So it's lineage. They go after that family on that lineage. But they can only kill one person a year. One thing with that, right?
What's with it, like... The work ethic of these vampires is atrocious.
They're not like the Transylvanian ones that just go hard.
No. The Transylvanian ones, those are hardy vampires. They know what they want and they know how to get there.
These Polish vampires got nothing.
Polish vampires are lazy, frankly. Have no initiative.
You're gonna hate this too. So
oh God.
So these vampires, they also suck blood, of course, right? Yeah. But unlike the neck, like what they do in other series on television stuff, they go for the wrists.
Honestly, that's okay.
But it takes them 3 times to bite someone to kill them. Okay? So oftentimes people will realize that, like, after the first time that something's going on, right?
Yeah.
Then they have 2 more days to, I think, figure this out before the vampire kills this person. So let's say the vampire succeeds, right? And ends up, over the course of time, killing the family, right? When the last one is dead, they will go to the nearby church and they'll ring the bell. And whoever hears the bell will also die. Okay?
All right.
So the best way to get rid of these vampires...
These Polish people were bored.
They had a problem. They had a vampire problem.
Yeah, I think they had a boredom problem. Continue. Sorry.
You have to go to the grave and open the casket. And the vampire would sit up when you do that. But apparently it's just a reflex. That's not a concern if they sit up. And I was thinking that I'm like, is that right? If you open a grave, does the body sit up? Because you see it in a lot of movies. They open the grave, usually the body's already decayed, like to bones, and they wouldn't sit up.
Yeah.
But when they took Rasputin's body and they burned it, he sat up. But that's because the fires were making his tendons like pull. And that's what's made him sit up.
Oh, that's cool.
But I can't just see a body just sitting up like a jack-in-a-box. You open the casket, right? And the story goes, open up the casket, the body sits up, and what you see is an individual whose eyes have gone white and who can't make a complete sentence, cannot make a functional like gestures. They're like a zombie, okay? Yeah. They're a lower level form of life who cannot put comprehension together. They're simply operating on instinct. So to get rid of this vampire, you can either put a nail through its head, destroying the brain, or take a shovel or a spade or whatever and cut off the head. Whew. Then you put the head at the feet of the vampire and the curse is over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Easy.
Supposedly, when Professor Perkowski went to Wilno, he heard these stories and that there were people who were terrorized by these vampires. He interviewed people who said one case, for example, a single mother gave birth to her child, and the child was born with that membrane on its head. They didn't know this tradition, and the child died shortly after. And then the mother also started getting very sick. So a friend came over to prepare a funeral dress for the child, and as she was making measurements of the child, they noticed the child, although it had been dead for a couple of days, was still rosy pink. Besides being cold to the touch, it seemed to be somewhat alive, sensitive to movements and touch. So this woman called in her mother to come take a look at this child and said, this child appears to be alive, but the mother is dying. And the woman she brought in knew what to do. She then took a needle and plucked the child's finger, and then took this needle with blood to the sick mother and put it on the mother's lips. And the child then stopped moving and died, and the mother recovered. The idea is that this child was a vampire that was feeding off of her mother. There's been a couple stories similar to that in his book, talking about the vampires of Wilno and some of the things the trouble they've caused. They've gone after children, they've been in the woods, those kind of things. This got a lot of interest in Wilno and by the community, right? The National Enquirer went there, knocked on doors, asking people these questions. And the people who Professor Perkowski interviewed, they were very defensive, said, no, he took it out of context. We don't believe these things. That's not possible. He was asking for stories, and we just gave him stories. Like, we don't believe in these tales, right? And they have very much denied that this town is at all haunted by vampires. Of course, there's always headlines at the time, and every 10 years so the headline pops again. Yeah. Count Dracula in Canada, or Canada's Transylvania, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, I want to talk to someone from Wilno.
Whoa.
I want to see what they say. So I called the Wilno Heritage Museum.
Cool.
And they were closed for the season because it's wintertime, right?
Yeah.
So then I called the Wilno Heritage Society, and I got through to somebody. And I was so excited, right? Because I was like, oh my goodness, there's someone to talk to about this. So I said, I was nervous, and it probably was not my best interview. It was very quick. I said, I'm going to give you a couple minutes. I just want to ask you some questions. And she said, I have a couple minutes. And I said, is it true that your town has a problem with vampires? Straight to the point, right? I don't want to batter on the bush on this.
I don't want to sugarcoat this.
Vampires or no?
Yeah.
Vampires are bust. And she said to me, we don't like talking about it, but the answer is no. She said that the families find it very offensive to talk about the subject.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, if someone says my town is plagued by vampires, I'm talking about it.
It's true.
I am telling everybody it's not true if it's not true, right?
Right.
I don't want that to be the thing I'm known for.
Right.
If it's not true.
Right.
So, that was that's a weird answer. You could just say no. We don't like talking about it, but no. So then I was doing more research, and other people were saying that if you ask people, they will deny it, but in a weird way like that.
Interesting. Yeah, that is weird, because why don't you just say no? Just a simple no.
Yeah. This happened in 1972 when this article was published.
Okay.
And since then, there's been a lot of concern that the community of Wilno is losing their Polish culture. Kids are growing up and moving away. People are dying. The population is getting smaller and smaller. It's also becoming more and more westernized, right? And these traditions are being lost. And this is one of the concerns that Professor Perkowski has in his book, that these traditions he has, where he talks here about not only vampires, but also about witches and dwarves and succubus spirits. He says that over time, these are going to be lost. And that right now, these stories are not actual stories of vampires, but of people trying to come to terms with the fear of life, like the fear of death, or the fear of misery, or trying to wrap their mind around something so incomprehensible as death, that instead they make stories about vampires. But, then there's people who say like, oh, well, we don't believe the stories of vampires, but my grandparents do. And then you look at stories from Poland from, the 1300s, where there's stories of vampires, where they chopped off heads and they dug up graves. I decided to go through the newspaper accounts of Wilno, to see if I can find anything that would say that there was maybe, a mass killing.
Yeah.
There was a grave that was dug up, anything like that. The only thing I could find, that 2 people died separate times in train accidents, right? Like, they were hit by a train.
Yeah.
In one instance, a house burned down and 4 kids were killed.
Okay.
In one instance, this guy was convicted of, or he was charged with selling poison to another person's wife to kill the husband.
Okay.
He was found innocent, and then like 10 years later, a bunch of kids dynamited his shop. That was crazy, but not related to vampires.
Okay.
And the other one I found was of a body that they buried without a funeral service and without an autopsy, which is suspicious, but doesn't scream vampires.
Right.
But then again, the book says in the opening paragraph, they have dug up many, but it was not told, never revealed. Maybe this wasn't in the paper, right? So what do you think?
Oh, God. You go one way until you hear that lady's response to you, I think. Like,
Yes.
like it's all, it's just like, it's the touristy thing, right?
Yes.
But they're not even using it
No.
as a touristy thing.
No.
And the way she responds to you is so strange.
Like they could easily make it into like a Salem of Canada, right? Very easily.
Exactly.
You got all the things there to turn to a tourist trap, but they don't. Instead, they're known as being the oldest Polish community in Canada,
Yeah.
right? They don't even want to touch it.
That just seems like we want to be known for being Polish, not vampires.
Right? like even if you said like the oldest Polish community in Canada, no, we don't have vampires. Like if that's your slogan, like that'd be great.
Yeah.
We do not have vampires here. Get people talking, but like, not saying how we don't have them.
That book is controversial just because of the accusations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like the accusations of, I guess it's not that old.
50 years this year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like the same thing with.
Do you want to see it? Because you can't see it.
Yeah. Let me see this here. You let me look and you talk.
So the book talks about like vampires, talks about witches,
Yeah.
dwarves.
Vampires, dwarves, and witches among the Ontario Kashubs. Or how did you pronounce it?
I probably said it wrong. It's probably someone who's I think of Kashubs, Kashubian. And you can see it's signed by him too at the top, like on the first page.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Yeah, that's written. It's handwritten.
Yeah.
Whoa. This is actually really cool.
It's a crazy one.
Yeah.
So when I was doing research, I wanted to find any incident that might say vampires, right?
Right.
Any kind of questionable killing,
Right.
burial, anything like that. The only thing I could come up with was in 2011, there was a mass killing in Wilno. This man killed 3 women, and it was written off as a domestic abuse. Like he was
3 women?
Yeah. Like he had history of abuse with these women, and then one day just snapped and said, kill them all. I was researching it today, and I didn't want to dig too much into it because it was like 2017.
Oh.
I'm sorry, 2011. So 11 years
Yeah,
ago.
recent.
Yeah. Some of the testimony was interesting because it said that the man, when he got angry, his eyes went black. He said that when he was firing the gun, it didn't feel like he was firing a real gun. He said he was not guilty, that they were guilty. He was innocent. And he testified, he was his own lawyer in court.
Well, that always works.
Yeah, he offered no defense, brought in no witnesses, and naturally was declared guilty.
Right.
And he's imprisoned. And I'm looking at it thinking, they never mention it in the book, but if I was a vampire, and let's say I have some of the vampire traits that Dracula has, or Mona the Vampire has, or Nosferatu has, one of them is hypnotism. And those sound like symptoms of hypnotism. So what if a vampire exists in Wilno that's using hypnotism instead of just killing people himself?
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to touch on that too much because it's still recent. People are still suffering. But I'm thinking that's the only one I could maybe we could stick some vampire onto this story, right? Like if we really make it
let's vampire this up.
Yeah, you have to kind of twist it. I'm like, this one, 60% I could say would maybe vampires be involved, but I'm like, besides that story, this is not a lot of evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
Besides the testimony of these 15 people.
I just wish that lady gave you more information.
I know. I wanted to press her harder, but I'm like, oh, it seems like it's a touchy subject. So the book says that when you conjure up these ideas of vampires, dwarves, witches, that those ideas can then manifest themselves into reality. So like my idea with the people who got killed in 2011, because I'm thinking maybe there was a vampire connection, therefore there is one. So maybe in the 1860s, these people had something occur, or they brought it back when they came over from Poland, that made them believe in vampires so much that to them it was a real, true story.
Right.
And to them it was as true as as night and day. But looking back at us, because we haven't grown up with that, we kind of feel like it's fake. So to them, perhaps it was real, but to us, it is not. So I'm going to say it's real because they said it was. But again, there has been very little evidence to back the claim.
I think the lady that answered the phone is actually the main vampire, and she is covering it up.
Yeah.
And we know what you're doing.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
And she hypnotized you over the phone.
I'm thinking
because wait a minute, she hypnotized you over the phone, Kenton.
Okay. All right.
Because that does not sound like the Kenton I know. To ask one question and then be like, okay, bye.
Yeah, it was a quick interview.
Yeah, that's not Kenton. Anyway, sorry, go on.
I'm thinking, the Heritage Society was made in 93 or sometime around 93 to keep the preservation of Wilno's culture alive. So what if, it's because of people trying to keep it alive that the story remains, because you're trying to you can't just keep the good parts, right, of a culture. You have to keep all sides of it.
Right.
So I'm thinking, if there's anyone involved in the vampires, it would naturally be the Historical Society, the Heritage Society.
Yeah.
So I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
What do you think of this story, Dylan?
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good.
It was spooky?
Very spooky.
Yeah.
Very spooky indeed. You got a book.
I got a book. I don't think anyone else has brought that book up.
It's a cool book.
And I went through the records of the Mercury Project online and sorted by date, sorted by name. I could not find that book, so I'm pretty sure that book got pulled.
Yeah. How did you get this again?
I found it online. So thank you for coming along. As always, my name is Kenton DeYoung, and this is my co-host Dylan Fairman. Are you?
I'm waving.
Okay. And this is Unsolved Canadian Mysteries.